The rain continued its gentle song as the evening settled more deeply over the mountains. Outside, the forest had become a world of soft shadows and quiet sounds. Every tree, every stone, and every patch of moss seemed wrapped in a peaceful blanket of mist. The winding path leading to Emma's little cabin was almost hidden now, disappearing into the silver-gray evening. Inside, everything felt warm and welcoming. The fire in the stone fireplace glowed with a steady orange light. Every now and then, a log shifted gently, sending a tiny shower of glowing sparks dancing upward before disappearing into the chimney. Emma smiled as she listened. She believed every fire had its own quiet voice, just as every rainstorm had its own gentle melody. She stood from her rocking chair and walked slowly across the wooden floor. The old floorboards gave a soft creak beneath each careful step. Nothing in the cabin hurried. Not the old clock. Not the fire. Not even Emma herself. She enjoyed moving slowly, allowing each small moment to be noticed. On a wooden shelf near the kitchen window sat several glass jars filled with dried herbs. Lavender, chamomile, mint, lemon balm. Each one had been gathered from her small garden during the warm days of summer. She chose a pinch of chamomile and a few lavender flowers, placing them carefully into a small teapot. Soon the comforting aroma drifted through the cabin. The scent mixed with cedar wood, fresh rain, and the gentle fragrance of pine carried in through a slightly open window. Emma poured the hot tea into her favorite blue mug. Steam curled upward in slow, graceful spirals. She wrapped both hands around the warm cup and walked back toward the window. Outside, the rain had become softer again. It no longer tapped against the glass. Instead, it whispered. Tiny droplets slid down the window pane, leaving sparkling trails behind them. Beyond the glass, the pine trees stood perfectly still, their branches heavy with fresh rain. One by one, tiny woodland creatures settled down for the night. A family of rabbits tucked themselves beneath a thick blackberry bush. A little fox curled into a bed of soft leaves beneath an old oak tree. High above, a sleepy owl blinked slowly from its favorite branch before tucking its head beneath a wing. Even the forest seemed ready to dream. Emma opened the cabin door just enough to step onto the covered porch. The cool evening air greeted her gently. She took a slow, peaceful breath. The scent of wet earth rose from the forest floor. It smelled fresh, clean, alive. Raindrops continued to fall from the roof, landing softly in tiny puddles below. Plink, plink, plink. Each drop created tiny circles that spread quietly across the water before fading away. Emma leaned gently against the wooden porch railing. The forest stretched endlessly before her. Layers of pine trees disappeared into the mist like waves upon a quiet sea. Far away, she could hear the gentle murmur of a mountain stream flowing peacefully through smooth stones. It had likely become just a little fuller after the evening rain. Somewhere nearby, tree frogs began their nightly chorus. Not loudly, only soft little calls that blended perfectly with the rain. It was as though every living thing had agreed to keep their voices gentle tonight. Emma smiled once again. "This is my favorite kind of evening," she whispered. The wind seemed to answer by brushing softly through the branches overhead. For a few peaceful moments, she simply stood there. She wasn't thinking about tomorrow. She wasn't remembering yesterday. She was simply enjoying the present moment. Sometimes, she believed, the greatest gift the forest offered was silence. Not complete silence, but the kind filled with gentle sounds. Rain, leaves, birds settling into their nests, water flowing over smooth rocks, the slow breathing of the earth itself. Eventually, the cool air encouraged her back inside. She closed the cabin door gently, careful not to disturb the peaceful rhythm of the evening. The fire welcomed her once again. Its warm glow filled the room with dancing shadows. Emma added another log. The flames rose quietly, painting golden light across the ceiling. She picked up a thick knitted blanket that her grandmother had made many years before. Its soft wool still carried memories of countless cozy evenings beside the fire. Returning to her rocking chair, Emma wrapped the blanket around herself and lifted her teacup once more. The tea had cooled just enough to drink comfortably. Each sip felt warm and soothing. Outside, the rain continued falling with patient kindness. The windows glistened. The roof hummed softly beneath thousands of tiny raindrops. The old grandfather clock marked another peaceful hour. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Emma watched the flames dance inside the fireplace. Sometimes they reminded her of little golden birds. Other times they looked like tiny glowing leaves floating upward toward the chimney. The cabin itself seemed to breathe peacefully. The wooden walls gently expanded and settled with the warmth of the fire. The roof offered quiet shelter from the rain. Every beam and every stone had protected this little home through countless seasons. Spring blossoms, summer sunshine, golden autumn leaves, snowy winter mornings, and always, the rain. Emma often imagined that the cabin loved rainy nights as much as she did. Perhaps that was why it always felt especially warm whenever the clouds gathered. Outside, the moon slowly appeared between drifting clouds. Its pale silver light shimmered upon every raindrop hanging from the pine branches. The entire forest sparkled. The night grew deeper, but it never became lonely. Instead, it became quieter. The kind of quiet that wraps itself gently around the world, inviting every living thing to slow down and rest. The rain continued to fall, soft and patient, as though it had all the time in the world. Each drop landed with perfect gentleness. On pine needles, on broad maple leaves, on smooth river stones, on patches of emerald green moss that covered the forest floor like a soft blanket. Nothing resisted the rain. Everything welcomed it. Inside her cozy cabin, Emma watched through the window as the forest disappeared behind a curtain of silver mist. She had seen this view hundreds of times over the years, yet it never looked exactly the same. Every rainy night painted a new picture. Some evenings the mist drifted slowly between the trees like quiet clouds. Other nights it settled gently upon the ground, making the forest seem like a magical place where every path led to peaceful dreams. Tonight, it floated softly between the tall pines. The trees appeared one by one, then disappeared again as the mist moved lazily through the woods. Emma smiled. She loved how rain made familiar places feel mysterious without ever becoming frightening. It simply softened the edges of the world. The little stream that flowed beside the cabin had become livelier after the evening shower. Fresh mountain water skipped over smooth stones, creating a melody that blended perfectly with the steady rhythm of the rain. Emma often imagined that the stream and the rain were old friends. When they met, they always seemed to sing together. One from the sky, one from the earth. Together, they created music that no orchestra could ever copy. Outside, the forest carried on with its peaceful nighttime routine. A tiny squirrel, its fur slightly damp from the rain, hurried across a fallen log. Instead of searching for food, it simply found a dry hollow inside an old oak tree. There, it curled into a fluffy ball and closed its eyes. Nearby, a family of deer stood quietly beneath a group of towering pine trees. The thick branches sheltered them from most of the rain. A young fawn leaned gently against its mother, listening to the soft sound of falling water. Neither seemed worried. The rain was simply another part of the forest story. Far above, hidden among the branches, an owl opened its large golden eyes. It turned its head slowly from side to side, watching the peaceful woods below. Then, without making a sound, it spread its wide wings. Its feathers caught the cool night air. With one gentle glide, it floated silently between the trees before disappearing into the mist. Emma watched until she could no longer see it. She admired the quiet confidence of the owl. There was no rush, no hurry, only calm, graceful movement. The old clock inside the cabin chimed softly. One gentle note, then another. The sound drifted through the room before fading into the comforting crackle of the fireplace. Emma stood and walked to a bookshelf that filled one corner of the cabin. It held dozens of old books. Some told stories of mountain life. Others shared tales of the sea, forests, and distant places. Many had been gifts from friends who had visited over the years. She ran her fingers lightly across their worn covers. Each book carried memories. But tonight, she wasn't in the mood to read. The rain itself was telling the story. She returned to her rocking chair. The blanket rested comfortably around her shoulders. The warmth of the fire wrapped around the room like a gentle hug. Outside, the rain became even softer. Tiny drops now slipped from branch to branch before finally reaching the earth below. The sound was almost impossible to separate from the breeze. Tap, whisper, drift, everything blended into one peaceful rhythm. Emma closed her eyes. She imagined following one single raindrop on its long journey. Perhaps it had begun high above the mountains inside a soft white cloud. Perhaps the wind had carried it across forests, lakes, and rolling hills. Then, at just the right moment, it had gently floated down to this quiet little cabin. Now it rested upon a pine needle, sparkling briefly in the moonlight before joining the earth below. It was a simple journey, yet somehow it felt beautiful. Outside, the forest seemed to breathe together. The trees swayed gently. The stream flowed steadily. The rain fell patiently. The wind wandered softly through the branches. It was as though the entire mountain shared one peaceful heartbeat. Emma opened her eyes again. The moon had slipped from behind the clouds for a few quiet moments. Its pale silver light touched the rain-covered leaves. Thousands of tiny droplets shimmered like little stars. The whole forest sparkled, not brightly, not sharply, only with a soft glow that made everything feel calm and dreamlike. Emma often believed that rainy nights made the world kinder. People spoke more softly. Animals moved more gently. Even the wind seemed careful not to disturb anyone's rest. She took another slow sip of her tea. It had cooled now, but it was still comforting. The lavender and chamomile filled the room with a peaceful fragrance. The fire continued its gentle dance. The rocking chair moved slowly back and forth. Outside, the forest listened to the rain. Inside, Emma listened too. Neither wanted the night to end. There was no reason to hurry toward morning. The night was meant for quiet thoughts, for warm blankets, for gentle music made by falling rain, for breathing slowly, for feeling safe. The rain continued through the night, never rushing, never growing loud. Emma sat quietly beside the fireplace, listening to its familiar rhythm. Then, through the soft curtain of rain, she noticed a warm lantern light moving slowly along the forest path. It was a traveler, an elderly man, dressed in a long raincoat, walked carefully beneath a wide umbrella. He wasn't hurrying. He simply followed the winding trail, enjoying the peaceful evening one careful step at a time. When he reached the little cabin, Emma opened the wooden door with a gentle smile. "Good evening," she said warmly. "Good evening," the traveler replied. "Your cabin looks wonderfully cozy. Please come in and warm yourself." He thanked her kindly, hung his raincoat by the door, and placed his umbrella on the porch to dry. The warmth of the fireplace greeted him immediately. He smiled as he stretched his hands toward the dancing flames. "I've walked many forest paths," he said softly, "but rainy nights have always been my favorite." Emma poured 2 cups of fresh chamomile tea. Steam rose gently into the warm air as they settled into the comfortable wooden chairs beside the fire. For a little while, neither of them spoke. There was no need. The rain carried the conversation. The fire answered with its quiet crackle. The old clock ticked steadily in the corner. Finally, the traveler smiled. "My grandmother used to say," he began, "that every rainstorm sings a different lullaby." Emma nodded. "I've always believed that too." They listened carefully. The rain tapped softly upon the roof. Drops slid down the windows. The wind whispered through the tall pine trees. It truly sounded like a gentle song. The traveler closed his eyes for a moment. "If people listened more closely," he whispered, "they would discover that nature never stops telling peaceful stories." Emma smiled into her teacup. Outside, the forest rested. The fire burned gently as the rain continued its quiet melody outside. For a long while, Emma and the traveler simply listened. The cabin was filled with peaceful sounds, the soft crackle of burning wood, the slow ticking of the old clock, and the endless rhythm of raindrops falling upon the roof. After a moment, the traveler smiled. "When I was a boy," he said softly, "my grandmother believed the rain carried tiny messages from the clouds." Emma looked toward the window. "What kind of messages?" she asked. The traveler closed his eyes and listened. "Messages that remind us to slow down, to rest, and to remember that the world doesn't need to hurry." Emma smiled. She had always felt the same whenever it rained. Outside, the tall pine trees swayed gently in the cool night breeze. Raindrops slipped from branch to branch before quietly reaching the forest floor, where they nourished flowers, moss, and tiny streams. "It sounds like a lullaby," Emma whispered. The traveler nodded. "Every storm sings differently," he replied, "but gentle rain always sings the sweetest." They opened the window just a little. Cool, fresh air drifted into the cabin, carrying the scent of wet earth, pine needles, and mountain flowers. The sound of the rain grew a little clearer, soft, steady, comforting, almost as if the forest itself were humming everyone to sleep. Emma leaned back in her rocking chair, wrapped her blanket a little tighter around her shoulders, and closed her eyes. The traveler did the same. Neither spoke again. There was nothing more to say. The rain was telling the story now, one peaceful drop at a time. And beyond the glowing windows of the little cabin, the quiet mountain forest listened to the rain's secret song, drifting gently toward another calm. Midnight arrived quietly, without announcement. The rain had become even softer now, falling in a slow, gentle rhythm that blended perfectly with the crackling fireplace. The cabin was warm and peaceful. Golden light from the fire danced across the wooden walls, while outside, the forest rested beneath a blanket of mist. Emma added one last log to the fire. The flames rose gently, filling the room with a comforting glow and the sweet scent of cedar wood. The traveler had already fallen asleep in a comfortable armchair, his face peaceful and relaxed. Emma smiled softly. She pulled a warm blanket over his shoulders, careful not to wake him. Then she returned to her rocking chair beside the window. Back and forth, slowly, quietly, she watched tiny raindrops slide down the glass like silver threads. Beyond the window, the pine trees stood silently beneath the moonlit clouds. Somewhere in the distance, a small stream flowed over smooth stones, its gentle murmur joining the rain in a soothing harmony. Emma closed her eyes and took a slow, deep breath. The scent of rain, warm tea, and burning wood filled the cabin. Everything felt safe. Everything felt still. The old clock continued its gentle rhythm. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Outside, the rain whispered its endless lullaby. Inside, the fire glowed softly, and little by little, the cozy cabin drifted into the quiet. The night grew quieter with every passing moment. The rain had become little more than a gentle whisper, softly brushing the roof of the little cabin. Outside, a thin layer of mist drifted between the tall pine trees, wrapping the forest in a peaceful silver blanket. Inside, the fire had settled into glowing embers. Their warm orange light gently filled the room, making the cabin feel calm, safe, and wonderfully cozy. Emma rested peacefully in her rocking chair. The traveler slept soundly beneath the soft wool blanket. Neither was disturbed by the quiet sounds of the forest. Outside, the woodland creatures were dreaming too. A family of rabbits slept beneath a patch of ferns. The little fox rested comfortably in its den. High in an old oak tree, the owl tucked its head beneath the wing, waiting patiently for morning. Even the trees seemed to sleep. Their branches swayed ever so gently whenever the cool mountain breeze wandered through the forest. Emma slowly opened her eyes. She looked out the window toward the peaceful woods. Moonlight filtered through the drifting clouds, causing every raindrop to sparkle like tiny crystals. It looked as though thousands of little stars had quietly settled upon the leaves. She smiled. The forest had become a dream of its own. No hurried footsteps, no loud voices, only the soft breathing of the wind, the distant murmur of the stream, and the endless lullaby of gentle rain. Emma closed her eyes once again. She imagined herself walking slowly along the forest path at sunrise, greeting the birds, the flowers, and the tall pine trees that had watched over the cabin for so many years. It was a comforting thought, the kind that made the heart feel light, the kind that invited peaceful dreams. Outside, the clouds slowly drifted across the moon. Inside, the glowing embers continued. As the hours quietly slipped by, the rain began to grow lighter. The steady rhythm that had filled the night softened into an occasional whisper upon the roof. Drop, pause, drop. The clouds slowly drifted eastward, making room for the moon to shine once more. Its gentle silver light spread across the forest, touching every leaf, every stone, and every blade of grass with a peaceful glow. The air outside felt fresh and wonderfully clean. Tiny drops of rain clung to pine needles like little glass beads. Whenever a cool breeze wandered through the trees, the droplets sparkled for a moment before falling softly to the earth below. Inside the cabin, the fire had become a bed of warm, glowing coals. Emma quietly stood and placed another small log onto the embers. The flame returned gently, filling the room with a soft golden light. The storm had passed exactly as it had arrived. Calmly, patiently, finally, the traveler awoke for a brief moment. He stretched, listened to the peaceful silence outside, and smiled. "It sounds different now," he whispered. Emma nodded. The forest is breathing again. Together they stood by the window without speaking. They watched thin ribbons of mist float between the trees while the first stars slowly appeared in the clear night sky. The mountain stream continued its quiet journey, carrying fresh rainwater through the peaceful valley. Somewhere nearby, a robin gave a single sleepy chirp before settling back into its nest. The forest seemed grateful for the gentle rain. Every flower looked brighter. Every leaf shimmered beneath the moonlight. Every breath of cool air carried the fresh scent of pine, wet earth, and wildflowers. Emma opened the cabin door for just a moment. The night welcomed her with cool, refreshing air. She took a slow breath and listened. The rain had almost disappeared now. Only the occasional drop fell from the tall branches overhead. The silence that followed was just as beautiful as the rain itself. It wasn't empty. It was filled with peace, with stillness, with the quiet promise of a beautiful morning waiting just beyond the horizon. Emma gently closed the door and returned to the warmth of the fireplace. The traveler settled back into his chair. Outside, the stars shone a little brighter with every passing minute, and the little cabin rested peacefully beneath the clear mountain sky, thankful for another quiet night that had ended with gentle rain and endless calm. Slowly, the first light of morning appeared beyond the distant mountains. The sky changed from deep blue to soft shades of lavender, pink, and golden amber. The forest awakened gently, without hurry, as if it too had enjoyed a peaceful night's sleep. Tiny drops of rain still rested on every leaf and blade of grass, sparkling like little diamonds in the early sunlight. Emma opened the cabin door and stepped onto the wooden porch. The cool morning air felt fresh and clean. She breathed deeply, smiling as the scent of wet pine, rich earth, and wildflowers filled the quiet valley. Nearby, the mountain stream flowed a little fuller than before, its gentle song continuing through the peaceful forest. Birds slowly welcomed the new day. A robin sang from a nearby branch. A pair of bluebirds fluttered through the trees. Far above, an eagle circled silently in the brightening sky. The traveler joined Emma on the porch with a warm cup of tea in his hands. "What a beautiful morning," he said softly. Emma nodded. The rain has left everything brighter. For a few peaceful moments, they stood together, watching sunlight spread across the mountains. The forest glowed with new life. The day passed as gently as the night before it. Warm sunshine filtered through the tall pine trees, and the little cabin rested quietly among the mountains. Emma spent the afternoon tending her small garden, watering the flowers that had been refreshed by the night's rain. As evening slowly returned, the sky once again filled with soft gray clouds. A cool breeze wandered through the forest. The pine branches swayed gently. Before long, the first tiny raindrop landed on the cabin roof. And then another, and another. Emma looked up and smiled. "Welcome back," she whispered to the rain. She stepped inside, lit the fireplace, and placed the old blue teapot on the stove. Soon, the familiar scent of chamomile and lavender filled the cozy room. The rocking chair waited by the window. The little blanket rested neatly across its back. The little cabin seemed ready for another peaceful evening. Outside, the forest welcomed the rain just as warmly. The rabbits found their cozy places beneath the ferns. The fox returned to its quiet den. The owl watched from its favorite pine tree, blinking slowly beneath the gentle shower. The mountain stream continued its endless journey, carrying fresh water through the valley with its soft, comforting song. Everything was exactly as it should be. Emma settled into her rocking chair with a warm cup of tea. She watched tiny raindrops race each other down the window pane. The fire crackled quietly beside her. The old clock marked the passing moments with its steady rhythm. Tick, tock, tick, tock. The cabin glowed like a tiny lantern in the heart of the forest. Travelers passing through the mountains often noticed its warm light shining between the trees. Some would smile and continue their journey. Others would remember stories of a little cabin where rainy nights always felt peaceful. Perhaps they were true. Perhaps every raindrop carried a little kindness. Perhaps every quiet evening offered the chance to slow down, breathe deeply, and simply rest. Emma believed it did. She closed her eyes for a moment and listened. The rain sang softly upon the roof. The wind whispered through the tall pines. The fire offered its gentle warmth. Together, they formed a lullaby older than the mountains themselves. A song without words. A melody that asked nothing except for stillness. As the evening became night once more, the moon peeked through the drifting clouds, casting a silver glow across the rain-washed forest. The little cabin stood peacefully beneath the towering trees, just as it always had. A quiet place, a welcoming place, a place where time moved slowly and hearts found peace. And somewhere beyond the mist, the rain continued its endless journey, carrying gentle whispers from cloud to forest, from leaf to stream, from one peaceful night to the next. So, if you ever find yourself imagining a quiet cabin deep within the mountains, with a warm fire glowing inside and soft rain falling all around, perhaps you'll hear it too. The gentle song of the rain, the comforting crackle of the fire, the peaceful rhythm of the forest. Close your eyes. Take one slow, easy breath. Let your thoughts drift away like the clouds above the mountains. And may the quiet rain carry you gently into the sweetest of dreams.